Senior political reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo standing by with you now to talk to one of the main guests at today's event. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. Who are you with?
Good afternoon to you, Stephen. Well, I'm with the Chancellor of UNISA, that's former President and Dr. Thabo Mbeki, who, as you've already mentioned, was one of the main dignitaries here today to celebrate, of course, 150 years since the existence of this university with a very rich history. And let me bring in then former President Mbeki to talk to us then about the significance and the importance of UNISA, not only for this country in terms of providing access to education, quality education, but also for the continent, especially when it comes to long-distance learning.
Well, no, UNISA is one of the major national assets of South Africa because of its size, the things that it teaches, but also the fact that it is indeed got a very good footprint on the rest of the continent, on the African continent, to make it truly an African university. So I'm saying that it is a major national asset. And indeed, as I was trying to say, whatever problems exist, if there are, there will be no doubt, we need to solve them. Because it's got to succeed in the work that it does, in the education, in the teaching, in the research, and in all of that, and helping the country and the continent to find answers to the many challenges that we face. We need the brain power that is located in the university, like in the other universities, but the brain power I'm talking about is on this university, which is 150 years old, the brain power to help the country and the continent to address our challenges. So it's a very, very important celebration today. I'm very, very glad that indeed the country joined to celebrate this anniversary.
And I think one of the critical things that came out, when looking at the history of the university, but juxtaposing it with where the university is, today, the challenges that you've mentioned. You quoted former MP Musibudi Mangena as well, talking about the governance issues, what came out of the independent assessors report. We also spoke to Dr. Bladen Nzimande about the ministerial task team and the work that has been done there. And he said he's still collating, the various, reports to come up with a solid response. Does this satisfy you as the Chancellor of this institution and satisfy you enough to still be associated with this institution?
No, I was very, very glad with the remarks made by Minister Bladen Nzimande, because basically as I heard him, he was saying, same thing I'm saying, this is a very important national asset. There are problems, let's solve them. And whatever it is that we do in terms of pointing whatever might be the mistakes and weaknesses of the university, it is not to weaken the university, but to strengthen it. That all of us have got a common task to make sure that UNISA is strengthened. And that is why he even offered his own personal services to say he's ready to work with the Chancellor in order to address those things. So I think as a South African, as Musibudi Mangena was saying, the task to make sure that UNISA grows from strength to strength, all of us as South Africans, he called us patriots. He said all patriots have got a common responsibility to ensure that the university goes from strength to strength. Not just the graduates of UNISA, alumni or whatever, but he says the nation as a whole. It's because of the importance of the institution.
And just last one from my side, from President Mbeki. When we listened to the speeches as well, one of the things that Dr. Nzimande mentioned was UNISA being front and center to respond to and lead, innovation. And in the time that we live in, globalization has not delivered the promises that it was supposed to. We're living in a time where there is an active conflict between Russia and Ukraine. At the weekend, we also saw what looked like was going to become a coup. Now, if we look at UNISA and let's say the International Relations Department, for an example, and the type of learnership that takes place there, and your assessments of how that should be looked at in terms of the current geopolitical tensions, what are your views?
So one of the things that Minister Bledisman said, which is very correct, was that here we have this fourth industrial revolution. We were not there as makers of history with regard to the previous industrial revolutions. He was saying that with regard to this one, the fourth industrial revolution, we must be participants, creators of these new technologies, makers of the industrial revolution, not just recipients of what it produces. And that was the task of the university, to make sure that its students, become that kind of instrument. It was very, very correct. I think that applies not only to the fourth industrial revolution, it applies also to this matter that you are raising, like in terms of international relations, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. How should it be approached? I'm talking about by ourselves as Africans. What contribution do we make in order to make sure that war ends? Because apart from it impacting on those two countries and the Europeans, it also impacts on us as Africans because of food shortages, fertilizer and things like that, cost of living. But he was posing the challenge that UNISA must produce these people, will produce these new ideas to help to resolve issues like this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It's necessary. It has to be done. Like the Thabo Mbeki Africa School. One of its particular areas is international. Yeah. So it must come out with ideas. What is it that we do? Not just reflect what is reported to them in the media, but to think, to be creative, to produce new ideas. It's part of what the universities are about. It's new ideas and opening new areas of knowledge, but very relevant to what needs to be done by South Africa and the continent.
Then, I know I did say that was my last one, but then what do you say then when now there's an extension? It's not just Russia and Ukraine, but seemingly internally within Russia now, we are seeing some kind of movement. As I said, some have described it as an attempted coup.
Well, as you would imagine, for a major international event like this one, the war between Ukraine and Russia, naturally I would be putting a close eye to that matter in any case. No, I do not. This thing that was attempted by Prigozhin and elements of the Wagner group was never going to succeed. It was never an important issue. He would never have the support of the rest of the Russian army or the population or anything. It was going to be a failure from the beginning. I don't know why he tried it. It was never ever going to succeed. So it's not a major issue. I wouldn't pay that much attention to it. Because it's not as though there was a very serious rebellion against the Russian government. There wasn't. Even this group, which tried some kind of armed insurrection, I'm saying was never going to succeed. So it's not a major issue. If you understand, which you need to do, the reality in the country, in order to be able, even to do what I was saying, for UNISA to say, this is what we think are the solutions. That must be based on a better understanding of the actual reality. And I'm saying with regard to this attempt by Prigozhin and the Wagner group to do whatever they were trying to do, it's not a major issue and was bound to fail from the beginning.
I mean, one of the things that analysts have observed is that now there's a likelihood of two Wagners existing. The one that's probably led by that small group, led by Prigozhin, and then the other one, for instance, that has operations in Africa. Wagner is existing in countries such as the Central African Republic. What do we make of that then? Because as you've already mentioned, we need to think and be leading the thoughts on how it affects Africa.
The reality is this, that the group that within the Wagner group, the smaller group which went along with Prigozhin, will be demobilized. It will cease to exist as a military formation. And the rest will continue to be the Wagner group and do whatever the Russians had agreed it should do. So the ones that were, in a sense, part of the rebellion will be demobilized. So there will not be two Wagner groups. That group will be demobilized. They've said in the announcement they've made is that the members of the Wagner group will now join the Russian army. It means the ones that were part of the rebellion will not be part of the Russian army, which means demobilization. They cease to exist. So it's not, I think there will be, whatever the origins of the Wagner group, I think these events mean that it's going to come under closer control of the Russian army.
All right, I have taken up a lot of your time. That is former President Thabo Mbeki, who is also the Chancellor of the University of South Africa, celebrating 150 years. I think in 150 years, there's a lot that's happened, within the decades in which this university has existed, apartheid, colonialism, and so I deemed it apt to also delve into the current issues that we are dealing with at a global scale that have an impact on us, not only as South Africans, but the African continent, Stephen. And so you would have heard then the former president reflecting on what we saw happening over the weekend, which I can anticipate, much like many analysts, that it will have implications for the months to come. We still have that BRICS summit in August, Stephen, with lots of speculation that it will be moved out of South Africa and possibly China. So lots on the go happening here today. But essentially, it's a happy birthday, 150th anniversary of the University, of South Africa. Stephen?
Ziyanda Ngcobo, our senior political reporter, thank you very much indeed, live for you in Zwane at UNISA's 150th anniversary celebrations.